Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So my name is Jen Butler. I'm the Director of Student Affairs Marketing Communications, and I'd like to welcome everyone to the Student Affairs Brand Training. It's great to see you all today. As you may remember, back in January, Strategic Communications rolled out the new campus rebrand, and we're excited to share how that relates to our work in student affairs. This is the first step and the start of the conversation as we begin to implement the campus rebrand. The goal of today is to share with you the new brand guidelines for the division created with Strategic Communications and walk through the tools and resources that are available. So this is just going to be a very high level, quick overview and review of all the new tools and resources that have been developed. So this is definitely the first step, just to kind of give a preview to everyone, and then we have lots of plans for next steps to work collaboratively with you all in this implementation process. I also wanted to note that we are working closely with the student housing and dining and campus recreation marketing teams on the rebrand implementation. And we will also be hosting individual marketing strategy meetings with the departments that SAMC supports as next steps in this process. So there is much more to come. We have a lot of information to share. We will go through it as thoroughly as possible, but we also want to make sure we leave time for questions too. So we're excited to kind of start this conversation with you all. So just a few housekeeping notes before we dive into the presentation. First, we will be sending the presentations slides to you all, as well as the PDF of the brand overview. So you'll have a copy of those materials that we're using today as part of the training. Also, we are recording this session, so it will be available to folks who were unable to attend. Maybe you'll have new folks or new student employees starting with you over the summer, and so they'll be able to watch this at a future date. Or if you want to access it again or maybe rewatch something, you'll have access to it as well. Please jot down your questions as we go through the presentation. We do have areas where we'll be stopping periodically throughout the presentation for questions. And we ask that you send your questions through the chat feature, and we'll be moderating that throughout the presentation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our senior designer in SAMC, Jen Vaughn.
Thanks, Jen. Sorry, for some reason I was like, oh no, it's me. Okay, so since we're talking about brand, let's step back a little bit and ask ourselves, what is a brand? Let's define that. In his book, The Brand Gap, Marty Neumeier wrote, a brand is a person's gut feeling about a product, service, or company. It's not what you say it is, it's what they say it is. Seth Godin defines a brand as the set of expectations, memories, stories, and relationships that, taken together, account for a consumer's decision to choose one product or service over another. And Jeff Bezos says that a brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So all these kind of definitions kind of point to the same thing, right? A brand isn't something you have, it's something you are, it's something that you live. You don't have a brand, you are a brand, you have a logo.
So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the various statements that Strategic Communications has created to kind of define our brand and kind of where we are in our brand evolution today. Okay, so the first is the positioning statement. So the positioning statement is meant to articulate the conceptual core of our brand and serves as the foundation of everything that we say and do. So you can review this position statement here. This is kind of the core of who we are saying UC Davis is and what we are trying to do. Next, you get into the brand essence. So the brand essence distills the positioning statement into a succinct, memorable phrase. So this is not meant to be a tagline, a slogan, or a headline, but rather an internal expression that serves as a gut check for the decisions we make and the spirit of everything we create. The brand essence is not public facing. So you won't see growing for the global good on any public facing materials, communications, messages. This is kind of our internal gut check to go back to our initiatives, our efforts. What are we doing? Does it all tie back to this brand essence that we have articulated here? And the last element is the rallying cry. So this is the external facing piece. So think of outgrow the expected as a universal rallying cry, a theme that connects all the constituents of UC Davis. The phrase may be used freely as a headline when it suits the purpose and context of the communication. So I'm sure many of you have seen this statement used in materials or messaging, and you will continue to use that. And that's kind of like our outward mantra rallying cry that we're using as part of this rebrand campaign. So what we wanted to do is create our own essentially positioning statement mantra for student affairs and the work that we do and the importance of the work that we do. So I'm just going to take a moment to read it. I think when you hear things aloud, it does give it a different emphasis. And so I just want to take a moment to read through it so we can all just think about it and kind of take it in as we listen. So student affairs is here to help students outgrow expectations, their own and society's, to thrive outside the classroom so they can succeed in it, to design a life and identity, be empowered to realize values and dreams in the wider world, be fed and housed regardless of circumstance, respected and lifted up. From our beginnings as an agricultural school, we know that it takes more than let there be light. Roots need the right conditions to grow deeper, and branches need the space to spread out and up. We offer not just services, but space for coming together as a community and as communities. This is student affairs. This is UC Davis. This is what we do. And we do it because Aggies who understand who they are, where they want to go, and that we're in it together, who outgrow the expected, who push past limitations and outpace uncertainties, will be the ones to build us a better California, America, and world. So we're calling this the Student Affairs Difference, and we're really trying to kind of encapsulate, again, the significance of our work and just really remind us all of what we are here for and who we are here for. And it really is all about the students, and we're a division that is very student-centered and wanting to make sure that all of our students are successful and thriving and finding their place, their communities, their support systems during their time at UC Davis. So hopefully this is something that you can all find pieces of the work that you're doing and identify with. And we're really excited about this opportunity to really carve out a special place for what Student Affairs does. A lot of times we get questions about like, what is Student Affairs? What does it mean? And so we really wanted to have something as part of this rebrand that helps frame it maybe in a different way and helps frame it for people about why we exist and why we need to exist. And now I'm going to pass it over to Andrew. Sorry.
Hey y'all, Andrew McDaniel, Associate Director at SAMC. So I'm going to talk a little bit about voice and tone. So voice and tone might not be the first thing you think of when you hear the word brand, but they're just as significant as any other piece when telling the UC Davis story. It's a personality that humanizes us and humanizes our brand, but it's not one size fits all. And how we talk about who we are is a little bit different than how we talk about what we do in this new brand. So when we talk about who we are, we're witty, we're pithy, we're a little offbeat, and exhibit a sharp sense of humor and an unexpected point of view. We're compassionate and human. We have an intuitive empathy that motivates our behavior and decisions. We're earnest and sincere. We embody diligence and hard work. We're curious and inquisitive. We find excitement in purposefully exploring potential solutions. And when we talk about what we do is smart and perceptive. We're a world-class organization across the board. We're mindful and deliberate. If we're not making the world a better place, we're not going to do it. We're profound and meaningful. Our work is important, and it has the unique potential to uplift and unite. And we're forward-looking and groundbreaking because we're pursuing a better future. We have to be ahead of the game. So another piece of the puzzle when determining the voice and tone of what we're creating is to think about our audience. So this rebrand is for all of UC Davis. So the UC Davis brand encompasses student affairs, development, HR, UC Davis health, athletics, it's the whole board. And as the division of student affairs, our main voice falls into this casual and vibrant category when we're communicating with current students or prospective students. That's not to say everything we do has this voice and tone, because, you know, there's a lot of times when we're communicating with parents or employers or community members, donors, media. But sort of the general guide when talking to our current students is keeping our tone light in this casual and vibrant zone. And so, yeah, you couple this with the traits that we mentioned on the previous slide when really determining what the tone of the piece that we're creating is. So sort of our first built-in spot for questions, if anybody has some so far.
Any questions on the positioning statement, the student affairs difference? Saw a comment from Leanne. Thank you for that feedback. All right, we'll keep going.
Okay, so it's Jen Vaughn again. Usually when you think of brand, most people think of visual identity. It definitely represents our university at the highest level. So it's really, really important because it's vital to our brand because it's one of the most recognizable parts of it. So the visual identity contains colors, fonts, icons, and unique graphic elements. And it's important that these elements be used with good discipline and good judgment to build consistent communications. Gen Z pretty much expects nothing less than polished professional level visuals. So let's kind of just talk about the logos for a second. Stratcom has outlined all the aspects of our new brand. So you can see our parent, or the top level, is UC Davis. Then the next level is student affairs. And then the level below that is kind of, you know, our department or unit. And so we'll talk through here how the brand affects student affairs and our individual units as a whole. So these are a collection of our word marks in student affairs, and these are mainly for administrative units, you know, with the UC Davis logo and then the name of the department underneath. And within student affairs, we sort of have a very special case where there are certain units or departments that serve a distinct cultural or identity-based community, and they have been granted permission from Stratcom to use what we call a graphic element. So these were designed and inspired by community feedback and created through usually a 4 to 6 month collaborative process with SAMC and the unit. So far we've been able to design 6 graphic elements, and we have 4 more currently in progress. So some existing logos don't fit the current brand standards, so they've been approved for us to redesign. So I know there's been a lot of talk about what is and what isn't a graphic element, how do we use it? So I'm gonna kind of go through a quick exercise here, what to do and not to do with graphic elements. So a graphic element is a visual icon. So we're not gonna use words or names or letters or anything like that to identify what the unit is. The only way that your graphic element can be paired with words is when it's used with the logo or the unit signature as a logo. So you'll see here, this is an example of nothing that CADS ever did, but in case someone has a crazy idea of how to do things, say maybe putting initials in your graphic element, or you know, using the words in a different way, that's a definite no. The only way it can be used is when it's paired with the official unit signature. The graphic elements can be used as sort of a decorative element in your design. So you'll see here another example from CADS. We've used the graphic element on the front to kind of show who this is for. And then you'll see the Center for African Diaspora Student Success is, you know, it's not meant to be together, but it also lets people know who this is from. And then on the back, you'll see that it's in 2 places. One at the top as more of a decorative element, and then down at the bottom, paired with the unit signature, used as the formal logo. So this is sort of the same postcard, but with a don't, right? So you see it's missing the actual official logo down at the bottom. And so when you use the graphic element as just the logo, it's really hard to tell who it's from. And it also doesn't have any reference to UC Davis at all, which is our parent brand. So this is definitely a no-no. Another don't is, using, again, your graphic element on a postcard or something, say with a partnering department. Your community might, really recognize your element, but maybe not everyone else. So there's no way for them to really know that, who you are unless you put it with your entire logo. Another category of logos that we have are sub-brands. This doesn't necessarily apply to anybody. They're sort of very rare exceptions to the standard logo policy. Units with a pre-existing marketing effort built around a non-standard mark can be grandfathered in. Otherwise, units must demonstrate a public-facing or retail message or other business need that cannot be addressed within the official identity system. So if that is the case, for student affairs units, these logos must be designed by SAMC and under the direct supervision of strategic communications. So sort of the last category of brands we have is called programmatic brands. And so programs and initiatives that serve non-academic functions can be represented by what we call a programmatic brand. So these are distinctive marks that are represented mainly by a customized text treatment and not a graphic to help visually unify the effort for audiences across the campus and beyond. So they don't contain the UC Davis wordmark, and the relationship is usually indicated by text only and can only represent efforts by the unit and not the unit itself. So in other words, this programmatic brand never really stands as your unit signature. It can never be used as a logo. Okay, so let's talk about fonts. Hopefully you recognize Proxima Nova. The campus has been using that for a number of years now, so we've kept it. It's really a good workhorse. It comes in a lot of different weights. It's very friendly, easy to read, very versatile. So it can be used in any application, headlines, body copies. There's usually a size and a weight that you can use for whatever you need. We have 2 new fonts that are being introduced into our arsenal. We have Ryman Eco. So this face was designed as an environmentally sustainable typeface. So it uses about 33% less ink than other typefaces in print. And it's great for headlines and large applications. It does get hard to read when you use it smaller, so definitely take a look at that before you use it for anything like body copy or captions. And then Freight Text is our serif font. If you know anything about what our fonts were before, we used to have a serif font called Berkeley, which I never really understood since we're UC Davis. But so that has been replaced with Freight Text. And so serif fonts are usually used for longer form body copy and smaller captions. So these 3 fonts, I want to reiterate, are the only fonts that we are allowed to use. And so to purchase licensing, you can refer to Stratcom's brand guide, and they'll show you how you can purchase these fonts. So the next thing I want to talk about are colors. Our blue and gold are not changing. Those are still the same, and we're actually getting a custom Pantone color for our blue and a real, actual, true Aggie blue for us. And so what you're seeing here, these like 24 colors, is our expanded secondary palette. So it's very reminiscent of, if you are familiar with the brand palette before, the Vibrant palette. It works, there are color families that go down in the columns and go across in the rows. And so if you're thinking about, well, what colors go well together, what don't, you can kind of look at the families as rows and columns and even quadrants to kind of help you determine what works well together. I want to reiterate that these are the only colors that we are allowed to use. And really, Stratcom has given student affairs more latitude than any other unit or department on campus to use the secondary color palette because our audience is current students. So we can reserve heavy blue and gold usage for things that are more administrative or more official, but enjoy the freedom and the flexibility of the secondary color palette to attract our student audience. So one thing also to note, you'll see some of the text on some of these colors is white, some of them is black. That all has to do with accessibility in terms of finding the right contrast in order to make things readable. So you can also refer to Stratcom's guide, and we also have a guide on accessibility and what color combinations on the web and print work best and in what sizes. So there's some new things that we get to add also to our visual identity. We have a set of custom illustrations that you'll see. And they kind of bring out that, fun, quirky, approachable character of our brand. We feel that within student affairs, they should be used sparingly for greatest impact and to bring life and personality to pieces. The main campus will be using them a lot. So I think when we use them, they're gonna seem more official than, student facing. So I think that that's another use that you can think of about with them. If the style of these illustrations looks familiar, that's because they were created by a UC Davis alum, Stephen Noble, who graduated in 1990. And he's done illustrations for American Express, Forest Light, and many, many other books and lots of things that you'll see everywhere. And then another element that we're adding is the watercolor brush strokes. Again, it's just kind of another way to add that personality or interest to your piece, adding texture and softening kind of your design. So if anybody has any questions. So I see one from Sarah Hawks. Will the new secondary colors be added to Sightfarm? You definitely need to use the secondary colors on your websites. I don't know exactly what you mean by added to Sightfarm. I'm gonna punt that to Justin Lee.
So right now the built-in branding colors in Sightfarm are the old secondary palette. So I was just wondering when it'll switch over to this as the built-in colors in Sightfarm.
Yeah, my understanding is that the next great version of Sightfarm will be released January, February-ish. And at that point, the new branding colors should be integrated into Sightfarm.
So should we manually
No.
make color adjustments? No, just stick with the old colors.
Stick with the old colors currently, yes.
One thing I just want to add on to that is that I don't want anyone to think that like after this training starting at 4:01, like we're all using all this stuff perfectly. So that is not the expectation at all. This is going to be a gradual implementation. We all have various cycles for design elements and printing, and we still really don't understand what fall is going to look like and what our outreach to students and things like that. So this is going to take a while to kind of fully implement, and we're here to work with you on that. So I just did want to make that clear, to the best of our ability. Any new projects coming up, we're going to be using all the new fonts and colors and rebranding elements. But it doesn't mean that immediately there's been a switch flipped or anything that we need to start doing it right away. So I just want to make that really clear. It's going to be a process and a long-term process, and we totally recognize that.
So I see another question from Leanne. Are there ways for us to save the colors, like on Word or something, so they can be used easily? So in the Adobe Suite, we do have a library set up where we have a digital color palette and the print color palette that we can share with people. I have created palettes in Word so that I can access them easily. I don't know if it's something that I can save and share. So that's a really good question. And if that is something that we can provide, we will do that. So we appreciate that everyone wants to be on brand, and I'll put that down as a tool to provide as well.
So any other questions on the elements that Jen reviewed regarding the visual identity system, colors, fonts, design elements? These are all great questions. All right. So we are going to transition over to Justin Ling now to talk about our channels and start with a website.
Yeah, hi everybody. Justin Ling. I'm the Associate Director overseeing web for the division within Student Affairs Marketing Communications. To backtrack a little bit to the question that Sarah had. Yeah, so the new version of Sightfarm that should be implementing a lot of these branding changes, we are being told at this point should be available come January, February. Not quite sure what that's a long ways away. Lots of room for things to move forward or back a little bit. But those changes will be coming. But in the meantime, we do have some exciting changes that we'll be talking about with Sitefarm and the division. So Sitefarm, as most of you or some of you may know, is the campus's content management system. And the division is embracing the use of Sitefarm across the division. And what that means is that wherever possible, and in most cases, divisional websites should be either in Sitefarm or migrated into the Sitefarm content management system. Now, we do realize, of course, that there might be technical reasons why a particular website might not work in Sitefarm or might not be able to be supported by Sitefarm, but we can have those discussions, or if you have a tech group within your department, we can kind of work with them to figure out how that may or may not happen. But we are developing a divisional approach that has kind of 4 guiding pillars, that being usability, searchability, sustainability and quality assurance, and accessibility. So these are kind of our guiding principles moving forward that will really kind of call back to as we work to build out new websites, manage and maintain current websites, and move forward. So the divisional approach. What does that mean? And kind of like what's the goal? Well, the goal is to create familiarity across divisional websites. That doesn't mean that all websites need to look the same or kind of function the same way or have the same photos, the same layouts, but there should be kind of this underlying organizational structure to the sites that tell users your site, your department is part of a larger ecosystem. We can leverage that and really kind of showcase all of the things, all the services that the division has to offer. At the same time, sites should be easy to use, easy to maintain, and accessible. So how do we get there? Well, there are a number of things that go into this, and it's not necessarily going to happen overnight, but we are already having some of these conversations. And we can start by asking questions about how our divisional sites are using Sitefarm, and how can we be using the pieces within Sitefarm in a more meaningful way. So for example, how are we structuring and using navigation? How are we structuring the About Us section? Are we talking about just ourselves, or are we talking about where we are, where our division is, or where our department is within the division, and how we support the division? Where should links to like the giving section go? How are we using banner images? How are we using marketing highlights? And then of course, what about customizable elements such as calendars, social feeds, and any other kind of like plugin that might be used in the site. So again, the idea is to create some underlying cohesion across sites to strengthen the divisional brand. So how do we get there? Well, we want to shift from a decentralized to a more centralized structure for major updates. So currently, the way things have been working within Sitefarm for the last 2 years is that the web group meets with folks across the division. You get a little bit of training. We help you kind of figure out what your site's going to look like. We'll help you build it out. We launch it, and then you're kind of pushed out into the world where you're going to be managing and maintaining your site. And generally speaking, people only contact us when there are issues or problems. And we want to move away from that because we are seeing that is creating some challenges and some issues. We're 2 years into using Sitefarm at this point, and we've learned quite a bit. One of the biggest things that we've learned, the biggest takeaways, is that Sitefarm actually has a fairly steep learning curve. The underlying content management system, Drupal, is fairly steep, and we are seeing that most folks, not everybody, but most folks, just don't have the resources or the time or the energy or the patience to really sit down with Sitefarm on a daily or weekly basis and really learn how to use it and take advantage of it. And so we're finding that this is kind of creating some challenges. And what we're hoping to do is for SAMC to be more of a partner than a resource, and really kind of help folks more frequently in their management and updates and training for their websites. And so we are developing, or we have developed a new web form, kind of like a ticket form on the SAMC website that is separate from the traditional project request form. And so what we're hoping to do is, instead of this like perceived notion that, oh, if I have a problem with the web and I put a ticket in, it's going to take, 3 or 4 weeks for someone to help me. We really are trying to section these things out so that you can get a response, get some help, get some feedback from the web group within hopefully 24 to 48 hours. Most web edits or web kind of troubleshooting things that come into our emails, we can generally tackle those things right away. And what we're trying to do is provide a more formal and structured approach to those issues and those kind of troubleshooting help requests. Part of the using SAMC as more of a partner and some of the changes within Sitefarm as well is that we're really trying to define the roles and kind of access that people have within Sitefarm. So we are working to develop templates. We're working to kind of not lock down access in a kind of negative way, but really lock down access so that folks in their areas really just have to focus on making edits to the content, and where our group can really roll up our sleeves and jump in and help you build out that framework, help you build out the look and feel of the site so that you can just focus on the things that you do, your content and your service, and really kind of take away some of those nerve-wracking issues with doing something a little bit more advanced within your website. So we do understand that some groups have technical staff, and we'll be working with groups individually over the summer to really kind of fine-tune what that access looks like across for your site, whether we're really kind of pulling back a little bit and really just having you focus on editing content and maintaining the kind of that piece, and we're really focusing on kind of the layout and the visuals, and helping you kind of maintain the structure of the site to where you maybe have some technical staff and we can be a little bit more hands-off. Again, understanding that there are trainings that are available. We'll work through some accessibility training and things like that. So there will be some changes to the way that works, and we'll be meeting with everybody to kind of talk more in depth of what that means for your individual department. And again, so what we're really trying to do is create an aligned approach across departments to really kind of strengthen the divisional brand. Usability and user experience is a big part of that. Getting folks, when they're looking at your website or another department's website, understanding again that the division is this big kind of ecosystem and we're all working together toward kind of this common goal. Homepage layout and prioritization of content. Again, we're really hoping to work with departments to help streamline what the landing pages and the home pages look like, streamlining top navigation. Again, trying to get to a place where when users are accessing our site, they're not having to relearn how to navigate sites when they're moving maybe from one website to another. Again, the About Us section, that's a good place where we can really talk more, but not just about who you are and what you do, but who you are and what you do within the division and how you support the mission and vision of the division. And then of course, accessibility compliance. So I know I sometimes speak really quickly and I talked a lot about some things. Are there any questions regarding maybe some of the shifts in websites and what we're going to be trying to do over the next few months? No? Okay. Well, again, we are going to be meeting with everybody, hopefully online, probably over the summer to discuss the future of websites for a particular department. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out to myself or save them for our meeting.
Thanks, Justin.
Okay, so I'm going to talk for a little bit about social media. And as part of these rebrand efforts and our overall brand reputation on social media, the division's going to be taking a much stronger approach than it has in the past. So with that in mind, I want to start the conversation about social media by kind of reframing it and discussing, what social media is and what social media isn't. So unfortunately, social media is not a quick fix. Creating an account isn't suddenly going to fill all of our events, and we're not suddenly going to have thousands of students, rushing to follow us. And it takes a lot of effort, strategy, planning, and staff time to effectively utilize a single social media account. Social media is not a student job. So student employees are invaluable assets to our team, but social media accounts are direct extensions of our brand and your department's brand and must be overseen by full-time staff. So students can absolutely manage the day-to-day posting and community building and those aspects of a social media channel, but it's essential to have career staff set the vision and a multi-year strategy for every account that your department manages. So in that said, the amount of work that it takes to properly run a social channel or 2 or 3, it might not always be worth the amount of time and effort required. And sometimes social media just isn't the right option. Just because Instagram is a super popular place for Gen Z, that doesn't mean that when they log into Instagram, that's where they want to see us. So we need to ensure that the content we're creating is correct for the social channel and the channel that we're using to distribute it. So Gen Z has lived their whole lives with social media, and a poorly run channel will actually hurt your department or your service's reputation instead of helping. And lastly, social media is not always nice. For every account that we create, we're taking direct responsibility to manage any hateful, upsetting, insensitive, derogatory comments or speech. And we're also taking on this direct responsibility if your account becomes part of an online crisis. And you're not in it alone. If you're ever in a crisis scenario, come to SAMC immediately. And we're here to support in those times. So when thinking about the process of creating or sunsetting an account, so sunsetting is just another term for shutting down an account, we look toward a divisional strategy that identified sort of 4 questions that we all need to ask ourselves. So we're going to take just a couple seconds and go through them. So really think about these when thinking about your social media channels. The first is, do I have dedicated career staff to oversee each of my social accounts? Do I have enough unique content to post multiple times per channel every week, each week, every week of the year? Am I going to create an editorial calendar, set goals, and track metrics on my channels to evaluate its overall effectiveness? And lastly, is this channel necessary to complete a goal that my other channels cannot? So if you answered yes to all of these questions, that's great. And sort of the next step would be to meet with SAMC. Before starting any new accounts, folks in the division are going to need to meet so that we can strategize, set up the account as per policies, review all of those relevant policies as well as accessibility standards. And then we can also help you submit your channel to the official UC Davis social media directory. But if you answered no to any of the 4 questions, it's time to reconsider our pre-existing channels as well as a need for a new channel. And SAMC can help you with that as well. We can help with strategize your outreach, think of ways to leverage pre-existing channels and different ways that will better align with your goals and resources while still reaching the students. And so this is, obviously that's a lot, and it's a lot of reframing about social media, but it does have a purpose. And it's to avoid audience overload. So in the division alone, there's more than 30 departments and units. And if every single department is asking students to follow you on 3 to 5 social media channels, subscribe to your newsletters, get your emails, be part of your listserv. So all of that for 1 unit. So imagine that times 30, times 50, times 100. That is sort of the landscape that we are asking our students to navigate just to find out information about ourselves. And so the division in SAMC, we recently sunsetted our Twitter, and it was for this very reason. And we've been working with departments across the division as well to sunset accounts. And it's putting a lot of consideration into the Strengths Finders ideology, and that's really a strong lens to view social media and social media output. Honestly, the odds are we're wasting a lot of time, energy, and resources to improperly run multiple channels, which overall is hurting our brand reputation with Gen Z, which is our target audience. So taking that StrengthsFinders approach, if we sunset our ineffective accounts, we're creating the bandwidth to focus on one flagship account that can better help us achieve our goals. And then once that account is running seamlessly, top to bottom, that is the time to consider moving into a new channel. So if you're interested in sunsetting accounts, or if you're interested in adding new accounts or just looking for guidance or an audit of what you have, all of those things SAMC is available to help with. So with all of that in mind, when deciding about the appropriate flagship channel that's the right one to reach your audience, it's also helpful going back to voice and tone to think about what is the right approach for each channel. So these quadrants are the same as the earlier grid when I was discussing voice and tone for your overall messaging. And this kind of maps out where each of the various social channels fall into that grid. I did want to mention Snapchat's listed here, but as for Snapchat's guidelines for universities, they recommend only one account per an entire university. And that's why Stratcom has one, but student affairs units are not allowed. So this is a good way and a good resource to look at when considering your content strategy for the channels that you oversee. And so the next, we're gonna look a little bit deeper into voice and tone and the way to talk about ourselves kind of in this new brand. So on the left is an example of kind of how we would have talked about ourselves previously. You'll see it's a little bit humble. We're stating the facts, but we're not really owning up to kind of our greatness and the value of what UC Davis has. So you'll see in the new example on the right, it's outperforming the country and most of the world as the #1 US and #3 global most sustainable university. So, you know, pretty similar words, pretty similar sentiment. It's just reevaluating that voice and tone in the way that we talk about ourselves. And it's not meant to be a brag. It kind of goes into that philosophy of if we're not highlighting our accomplishments, no one else is going to do it for us. And then you can even see in the photo choices, trying to pick something a little brighter, a little bolder, more visually appealing photos as well in our social media. And so I'm not going to go into all of them here. They exist in the brand overview as well as the online brand guide, but there's a variety of social media rules and policies that we all have to follow as well as entities inside of UC Davis. And that ranges from like account naming to profile picture, accessibility standards, who your account administrators are, and password recovery. So we'll show you them when we go over the brand guide, but that full list is written out and pretty easy ways to follow. So I wanted to end with something a little bit lighter. So kind of the GIFs that we're using in the presentation and some of these new brand elements are included in Giphy. And so one of the ones that's the coolest and probably the most useful is the UC Davis color palette. So what this means is you can pull up this GIF when you're creating an Instagram story and then use the eyedropper tool to select the color that's within the campus brand. And then so you can update your color of the font that you're using. You can put your colors for stories into brand, all within the Instagram app. And then when you're done, you would just delete the GIF because you don't need the color palette anymore. So after all of that, we've got some time for questions.
So Andrew, can you click back to the channels slide and just go through each one and name them?
Oh yeah.
Just so, yeah, there was some questions on some of the icons and what
Yeah.
they were.
So we sort of start with just Google in general, Google Plus, and just sort of how we use the Google suite. Falls into this more sophisticated, more subdued kind of business standard. And then moving over, you have Facebook that's kind of in the middle. It's heading toward the middle between subdued and vibrant. So a little bit neutral, but not nearly as casual. So we're heading in, or not really sophisticated, excuse me, heading into sort of the casual zone. And then you see sort of an abrupt jump to Facebook stories, where it's much, much more casual in the way we talk. Instagram, pretty neutral, or LinkedIn, sorry, pretty neutral all around, a little bit more vibrant as we're talking about our successes there. Down below that is Google Cameo. That's not a platform that we at UC Davis use, but it's included in this graphic. It's a pretty casual, middle of the road. Moving over to Twitter, still pretty casual, and a little bit more vibrant, a little bit more personality. And then that jumps into YouTube, which, you know, when we're using YouTube, often it's a lot more polished product that we're putting up, and that's why it's more into that sophisticated area. Whereas the flip side of that, Instagram, where both of these platforms are visual, but Instagram is more casual, and then jumping even further down into stories where you can be super casual. And then Snapchat, like I mentioned, we can't use Snapchat for our units and even us as the divisions channels because of Snapchat's best practices for universities. But then down at the bottom is Giphy, which is the very most vibrant that you can be, and sort of using Giphy to add visual elements to your social media, to your presentations, and just sort of the right approaches to when it's appropriate to use GIFs or stickers.
And then Andrew, there's a question about, does UC Davis engage in TikTok or plan to engage in TikTok?
Yeah, so that's actually in the brand rules and the brand guide as well. So in general, we look to the strategic communication social media team as our guidepost for what's appropriate within the UC Davis brand. So if there's a channel that they are not using, that's something that we are not going to use as well. So currently UC Davis is not using TikTok, and that means that we as the division are also not using TikTok. And really TikTok, if you kind of put every social option in a row of the ways for us to really appropriately interact and convey what we need to students, TikTok would be toward the bottom. I mean, you'd have to do so many channels and have such an impressive pipeline to students before we would get into the value of investing in TikTok.
Great questions. Any other questions on social media? I know this is usually a typically fun topic to talk about. So if you have any other questions, please send those through the chat. All right. Okay, so we are going to switch over into the brand overview. Andrew, do you want to disable your screen from sharing and then I'll pick it up?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully y'all can see the student affairs brand overview. Yes, see the document? Okay, great, thank you. So in addition to the online student affairs brand guide, we wanted to create an overview piece that would serve as an additional resource. The brand overview provides all the foundational elements and concepts of the new brand, while the online brand guide is meant to go into more depth and provide more information and resources. We're going to review both today. The brand overview is also a printable piece, so we thought that it would be nice to have this information available in both print and digital forms. So for those of you who may have attended the Strategic Communications brand training back in January, you would have received a printed copy of their brand guide. Our guide is similar, our overview is similar in look and feel, and combines the key elements from the main brand guide and is supplemented with specific and tailored guidance from the current student audience. So basically, I'm going to walk through the brand overview in more detail, but what we wanted to try to do was build off of the brand guide that Student Strategic Communications created and create a complementary piece that has some of the elements that we thought were important to pull forward from StratCom, but also have some tailored items and key items that are just for student affairs and our current student audience. So this is the brand overview. The PDF is also available on our online brand guide, so we'll see that right after this. So when you look at the kind of first spread here, you're looking at, why a student affairs brand guide? Why did we create this? This is the student affairs difference that we talked about previously. So this is all specific student affairs content. This over here is taken directly from the Strategic Communications brand guide. So you have the positioning statement, the brand essence, and the rallying cry that we reviewed earlier that are all part of the main UC Davis brand. So going into the second spread, it's more about kind of defining what a brand is, who we are, our work. This left section here is all, again, from the Strategic Communications brand guide. This right section is all specifically for student affairs and our current student audience. So we have a section on Gen Z audience, and this is taken from the presentation that Jen and Andrew put together specifically for Gen Z and the various considerations in communicating and outreaching to this audience. And then here's the audience quadrants that we reviewed earlier with the current and prospective students down here in this kind of vibrant and casual quadrant section. So again, looking at values-based, transparent, authentic, channel appropriate. So what are those specific considerations that we need to be thinking about as we try to reach our current student audience? The other thing in the overview that you'll see are these little icons here to click through for more information. So those include links out to the online brand guide and links you directly to the pages where you can access more information on this specific topic. So looking at the visual identity, we put together all the unit signatures, the graphic elements here, the UC Davis seal, and the programmatic brands. This is expanded upon in the online guide. These aren't all the programmatic brands we have, it's just a snapshot of those. We will be adding more to the online guide as well. And again, here's kind of that click through here for more information to access on unit signatures or word marks or whatever it is you're trying to access, graphic elements, those things. Then we get into color and visual resources, photography and videography. So when you're looking at color, in addition to the general palette that was provided in as part of the brand guide for strategic communications, this hasn't changed. But what we're talking about up here is the use of the secondary palette that has been approved specifically for student affairs. So that's kind of setting that foundation here, and then there are additional guidelines on the online guide as well. And then here are the fonts again that we will be using. When you go over here looking at visual resources, this is the main campus photo shelter where you can access photos that Strategic Communications is curating and posting for anyone to access. And then we also have, SAMC has an image library on Flickr, so making sure that you have access to those photos as well. And then photography tips here, those came through the Strategic Communications brand guide. And then another tip area. This whole digital section is all student affairs specific. So this is the content, a high level summary of the content that, that Justin went through today in the presentation as far as our approach, the divisional approach for websites, moving into a more centralized model, how each department can work with us, and then just some information about cross promotion, site structure, and Gen Z, and how really we know that current students are searching for websites. They will go to Google, they'll search for something specifically, they'll click on a result. If they don't find what they're looking for, they're going to go back out to Google, search for it in a different way, and try to find what they're looking for. They're not typically going to go through multiple clicks kind of in depth in your website. So that's why it's really important for us to work together and think strategically on how we can constantly be prioritizing, the content that's on our landing pages, the navigation, and how students are finding information at that first step, that first window that they have when they go to your landing page of your website. Then this whole section is all about social media. So these are the kind of 4 considerations that Andrew went through, and then the 4 questions as far as if you're ready to create a new account or possibly sunset an account. And then here's those audience quadrants again as a reminder there. One of the really exciting things through all of the work for the rebrand is that we created an entirely new SAMC website, and which now houses the online brand guide. And we've aggregated all of the different ways that you can work with us, the forms that you complete, whether it's a project request for form or a share news form or a website help form, and then all of the resources that everyone has to be available to use for them. So we really hope that the site will serve, and this overview will serve as a really rich and robust piece that's providing a lot of information, a lot of resources for you all to be able to access as you're trying to quickly figure things out. I know we all don't have the bandwidth to create marketing pieces from scratch, or to go through and get best practices and search what are the best practices if I'm trying to start a new social media channel. So we're trying to give you those kind of 101, those foundational elements all in one place and really easy to access, so you can get the information very quickly, and that it's really accessible. So that is a quick snapshot over the brand overview. And again, this is kind of just a complementary piece to the brand guide that was created by Strategic Communications and their print piece. And we're gonna go into the online guide now that will show you how, the sections that go much more into depth and provide more resources. But I did just wanna pause for a minute there and see if there are any questions or comments on the overview piece. Lost my chat window. Where did it go?
There aren't any other questions.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steffi. All right, so I'm going to shift over now into the new SAMC website. So this is live. If you go to samc.ucdavis.edu, you'll be able to see and follow along if you'd like. But with the new brand guide and tools and resources, the SAMC website needed a refresh. And I'm excited to walk you through some of those changes. So looking at, first of all, the About Us section, you'll find a page for the deliverable. So this is a blog style page that offers case studies from our projects, communication tips, and marketing best practices. And we'll be adding more content to this page in the upcoming year. So if you're looking for, there's some information on Gen Z here, how to represent data visually, with infographics and things like that. So there are a lot of really good articles on here that you can look at, and we'll be adding more over the summer and in the fall. So this is kind of our area to just learn more. If you do have some extra time and bandwidth, just to come in here and quickly see like, oh, they have a topic on, how to take better photos, things like that. So sometimes these resources will be helpful for you. So check those out when you're able to do so. Moving into our services section, this just provides more information about the services we offer. It's a wide range from strategic planning consultation to creative development and assistance with analysis and metrics. So the About Us section and the Our Services section, we are still building out. For the training today, we really wanted to focus on the Student Affairs Brand Guide and make sure that launched, done and ready to go. So we're still kind of working on these two tabs here to build those out. If you move into the Work With Us section, so hopefully this page will be a really great resource for everybody On the right-hand side, we have all the tools that you'll need. So if you need a project, if it's a large project, a marketing campaign, you may have a new idea, something you're trying to do, outreach initiative, event, this would be request a project here. This is the web update form that Justin Ling was mentioning as far as creating a streamlined process to engage with our web team and kind of really talk about some edits that you're trying to make, whether it's a navigation edit or you may be trying to add a marketing highlight box or maybe rearrange your homepage in a certain way. This is where you would go for that. We offer office hours on a rolling basis. So if there's something that you just need consultation on, you want to talk with us about, you need some advice, we're available for office hours. So you would use that form. This form right here for share news. Oh, so gonna ask me to log in. So this is the form that you will complete if you have anything that you want us to share on our managed channels. So our e-newsletter, SA Connect, which goes to student affairs staff, the My UC Davis updater tile, or our Instagram or Facebook account. So in one form, if you have something that you want to share, an event going on, an announcement, whatever it might be, you can fill out this form and then we'll look at and decide like the most appropriate channel for the news and for the request. So that's what the share news form is. Oh goodness, let's go back to CMC. There you go. Okay, that didn't work. Sorry, y'all. Let's try that. There we go. Okay, so work with us. Okay, so that's share news. LCD advertising, hopefully we will have students back on campus as soon as we are able and have our LCD screens up and running again. So this is where you'll go in and request the advertising. That page will take you to, that link will take you to a page that has all the information that you'll need as far as what the sizing of the ads are, what the requirements are, the timing, how long you can run ads, how long in advance we need to get the request from you, all that information. And then if you want to add an event to the UC Davis Life calendar, this is where you would submit that here. So basically we go through all of our channels that we have, what they are. So social media, updater tile, UC Davis Life, the calendar. If you're looking to reach student affairs staff, we have SA Connect, which is our newsletter, and then reaching the campus. You have the LCD screens as well as the student affairs website that we manage in the homepage. So hopefully, again, this Work With Us section will be a really great resource for everyone to be able to just kind of find quickly, you know, how you want to share information, or you need to start a new project, or you need an update on for your website, and you can just fill it out real quickly and get everything started. Okay, so this section is the main reason and part of the training of why we're here today, is kind of really showcasing the online brand guide and the resources that are available. So you can see it's categorized into all the main categories. So if you click on logos, you will see the word marks, the unit signatures, the graphic elements, the sub-brands. So you'll see the sub-brands is an area that is new. This is not included in the overview. So this is one area that's expanded from the overview document. And then you have the programmatic brands and the seal. The one thing that we're working on is we're creating a Google Toolkit file that will host all of the original files for the unit signatures, for the graphic elements, and these new signatures with the graphic element and the unit signature together. So that'll be part of the follow-up to the training, is we will link out to that file so you can all access the original files, so you can start using the new assets. And we'll also add it to this page as well, but we're just finishing up uploading a few more of those assets. So going back up to the top, colors is pretty straightforward. I do want to point out this section here that has more guidance on the use of the secondary palette. So another example of an expansion of the overview. And then you have the primary colors, digital colors, and then the secondary colors. wherever there is, so Strategic Communications also has their own online brand guide, and they really built it out. It's an excellent resource. Our focus of our online guide is everything you need to know that's student affairs specific. So here's a good example where we are going to link out to the accessibility standards for the use of colors of the UC Davis guide, because we're not going to recreate that here. You can just link right over and get that more in-depth information. So, continue to look on every page. There'll be link outs here that are linking out to sections to the main guide, the main online guide. Fonts are straightforward. Here are the various fonts. Again, this is an example. If you're interested in purchasing, you'll want to go to the UC Davis brand guide. They have all the purchasing information there. So we link out so it's easy to find, and you can access that information there. Design elements. This is just an overview of what they are, and that we have the illustrations, we have the brush strokes. There's some line work, various design elements that have been added. So again, we don't want to recreate what Stratcom has already done, but just give you a little bit of an overview, and then you can go out for more information if you're looking to use some of these more advanced tools. Messaging. So messaging is one of the areas that we built out in a more robust way and with more specific information for student affairs. And so we have on here, what is voice and tone? So this is, kind of the voice that we're using and the tone for speaking with current students. You'll also notice on this page is the editorial style guide. So we start first with the student affairs editorial style guide, and then the UC Davis one, and then so forth. And then also on this page is, best practices as far as telling our stories. What are those things that you want to look at, starting with your website? Student features, how are you showcasing student voice, the students that are engaged with your department or your center, and video, things to think about, and choosing the right channel here. On the right hand side, we have additional articles. So this is more detail on the editorial style guide. This is practical tips for writing. This is specific writing for Gen Z considerations, and then e-newsletter best practices. I do want to just take a minute to talk about, e-newsletters and planning your newsletter. There's an editorial calendar link in here. So there's definitely resources in here that will be really helpful. Even if you already have a newsletter, just think about, what is the strategy? What is the goal of the newsletter? Are we planning out for the entire year, like what the content's going to look like? Do we have a sense of that? How long is it? How accessible is it? And we, about a year ago, kind of reimagined and reviewed our newsletter, and we actually streamlined it. And we have a feature article and then 2 sub articles. And then we have this ad space that we created to just kind of get, links out to things that are important for students. And we're seeing really great results. So, just taking some time to just take a step back and think about your newsletter and what you're doing with your newsletter and what your goals are, and are you meeting those, and looking at some metrics could be really helpful, even for newsletters that are seemingly going really well and your community is really, has good adoption rate with. So that's a good resource here for newsletters. Photography and video. There is some content in here that is specific for, just making sure from accessibility perspective that your videos are captioned. Here's the main asset library. Here's the SAMC library on Flickr. As far as cell phones, we all know that we're all taking a lot of pictures with our cell phones. So just some tips and tricks on how to do that. And, just thinking about the best ways to take better cell phone pictures, how to pose people in a shoot and things like that. Social media. So this section definitely is built out pretty significantly. So we have those kind of 4 concepts, then the questions of creating and sunset an account. And then this section right here is really helpful. So everything you need to know about what different account types are, naming your accounts, new channels. So we talk about TikTok a little bit here, other channels, profile pictures, emails and passwords, all the kind of nuts and bolts stuff that you need to be thinking about in addition to the strategy for your social media channels. That's all laid out right here. And then strategic communications, they also built out a very robust section in their social media strategy section of their brand guide. So we linked to that here. So you can go in if you have some time for advanced reading or additional reading, you can check out that link. And then here is the social media voice and tone grid again. And then web has all the information essentially that, that Justin went over. It does dive much deeper into kind of what that centralization model is going to look like. Justin mentioned that some teams do have technical career staff, some teams that don't. So kind of based on how you're resourced, we'll work with you, you know, individually to kind of figure out what those right like permission settings are, and you know, what that right like collaboration and partnership is with us regarding website. And then accessibility. So this is one of the pages that I think I'm most excited about, is how are we creating content that is accessible? So instead of having accessibility in each section, we just created one accessibility page to kind of think about all the different types of content that we're creating and all the various considerations. So when we're thinking about design, social media, videography, web, and writing. So there's lots of good tips in here. We worked with the Student Disability Center on creating this content. This is a page that I also anticipate will grow as time goes on, and we'll continue to add resources and information. So we're really excited to try to help break down what does it mean to have an accessible website? What does it mean to post on your social channels and making sure that the content is accessible? So all those kind of various considerations. And then lastly is the tools and resources section. So this just lays out all the tools and resources that you have at your disposal for anything you're trying to do marketing wise. So Jen's going to talk more in depth about Canva. A creative brief is a great resource as you're kind of thinking about what your project, your goals, your project, what are you trying to accomplish? The editorial calendar template is a given for newsletters or social media, what you're, you know, things that you're trying to create and plan that out for content. We also have a marketing plan template, as well as a social media content plan template. So that's specific for social media channels and how you can kind of think about building out your content throughout the year and what that's going to look like. Okay, so that was a very high level, very quick overview of the website. Andrew, did you want to talk a little bit more about accessibility? I know you had some additional thoughts on that and notes to just kind of overview the goal of our accessibility page.
Yeah, I can share my screen again.
Okay, here, let me stop sharing.
Okay, so yeah, Jen went through this section, and like she mentioned, our goal was to kind of put accessibility in one place, and there are links all throughout. So when you're like in the design section, there's links for accessibility. When you're in the social media section, there's links, but we wanted kind of one comprehensive place because a lot of the tactics and pieces overlap with each other. And like Jen said, we've been working with the Student Disability Center. We've also been taking some trainings as well about accessibility, because sort of how this starts is really the viewpoint that we are trying to have and promote in terms of accessibility. It's not important because it's mandatory. It's important because we have an obligation to help every student achieve their educational goals. So just a quick run through of this. So design, it really goes into this accessibility color guide. So this one is more expanded than the one in the overview. And this really goes into, so these are all of our secondary color palette, and it goes into every color text that we can use on this type of background, and then minimum font requirements. So if you're gonna use sunflower on this Merlot color, if you're using bold, it can be a 19 point, but for accessibility, if you're not doing bold, it has to be 24. So this is really, anyone who's doing design work, any designers or any folks using Canva, which we'll go over in a minute, this is really the guide. about what colors can go with what colors and what font sizes to use to make sure that this is an accessible piece that we're creating. So social media, there's a ton. One of the most important pieces is that posting a JPEG, PNG, PDF, no matter what it is, if we post that on social media and say, check this out, that will never be accessible. We have to use alt text. We have to explain what's happening in the graphic because screen readers will never be able to interpret that, at least as social media exists today. And so with that in mind, we linked to the UC Davis guide, and I wanted to explicitly pull it up. There are individual alt text guides for the main channels. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. These are going to be step-by-steps of how to start adding customized alt text into your social media. Right now, these aren't fully encompassed in ADA law, but it's really the forefront in the world that we're in right now. There's a lot of activism going through lawsuits of universities, and for good reason, because if we're using these channels to communicate with students, they need to be accessible. So videography, there's a couple resources here. The key piece is to caption all of your videos, and there's some different ways to do that. Web accessibility goes through to the main university standards, which are really the international standards that we follow. But there's a tool here called Siteimprove. This is a tool that anyone in the division can have access to. Some permissions might need to be set up, but it's where it's a UCOP tool where your website can be evaluated, but there's also a series of trainings. And these are some of the trainings that SAMC has been taking about accessibility in each of these areas. And then the last piece we wanted to include is something that is, really not thought of a lot in terms of accessibility, which is writing. In general, it's recommended that we keep our writing between a 6th and a 9th grade reading level. And there's a dyslexia simulator here and sort of explains that process of why. And then there's also document conversion software that the university has. So we can convert text and image-based files into different formats like audio, braille, e-text, and it's a pretty simple tool. And additionally, Microsoft Word also has built-in accessibility tools, which you may or may not have used, and that will tell you sort of what reading level that you're writing at, as well as it will judge your font size and color combinations in terms of accessibility as well. So that kind of covers accessibility. There were two other things I wanted to show really quickly before we jump into Canva. And one of them is Photo Shelter. So we've been learning that a lot of folks in the division don't know that they have access to this. So this is the campus's main photo, video, and audio database. So you will have to set up an account, but because you have a UC Davis email, you can set that up and then it'll link through your Kerberos. But this is set up in such a way where Stratcom has laid it out in terms of like photos of people, photos of places, really detail specific photos and videos, as well as this category they're calling the Davis Different. So these photos are really uniquely UC Davis. But this is a tool that all of us have access to when looking for photos. And then in terms of the Division of Student Affairs, as Jen mentioned, we also have this Flickr channel. Now, not all of these folders will be available to everyone. There are, some administrative headshots as well as really, really community-specific cultural events that we would need a level of permissions before just anyone could use those photos. But this is another resource that's specifically student affairs. So I guess any questions before we move into kind of the Canva demonstration?
So there's a question, can students through their Kerberos access these photos? And the answer is yes.
Okay, well, if there aren't any additional questions right now, and there will be more question time at the end, I'll go ahead and stop share so Jen can jump into Canva.
Okay, good. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna share screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So here's Canva. We're hoping to roll out access to this Canva in mid-July. So you might be asking yourself, I already use Canva. Why do we need to talk about this? Canva has recently released an enterprise version of Canva. So it is slightly different from maybe what you're using personally or with a pro account. So you'll see here that I have access to different teams. So if I have a personal account or a pro account, I can toggle between my personal account here, where it's gonna have like all of my other designs, all the things that I've done here. But then I can also go into, sorry about that. I can go into the UC Davis account, where Stratcom has set up certain things that all the campus can use. So within your personal or pro account, if there are templates that you're currently using or that you've seen that you like, let us know. We'll take a look at them. And the great thing about Canva for Enterprise is that we can take those templates and then apply the UC Davis brand to them so that we can use them with our fonts and with our colors. The way seats are going to work is that to get everyone started on the Enterprise Edition, the division will pay for 1 seat for each unit for the student life portfolio, so that's Sherry's group, and seats for the staff for campus rec and for housing and dining. If you want to get more seats, each additional seat is $324 annually, which is significantly cheaper than say Adobe Creative Suite. Over the summer, SAMC will be holding marketing bootcamp meetings with individual units, and we'll kind of talk about what your design needs are and what your staff resources are like for each unit to kind of help determine how many more seats you might need. And there's also an opportunity, like I said, to reallocate money from, say, Adobe Suite licenses to this Canva license as well. So kind of going over quickly what the design or what the Canva enterprise experience looks like. If you go into designs, obviously I don't have anything here right now, but this is where all your designs will populate. If you go to folders, if you go into here, so this is the UC Davis created brand guide for all of us, and they have different folders here that I'll go through with you. They've created design templates for all of campus to use, so you'll see they have things for COVID-19. They have templates that they've designed for commencement and graduation. So these are things that all of campus can use, and they have organized them into folders here. So you'll see that they have templates for print, templates for presentation, templates for social media. So that's how you can access the templates that Stratcom has designed for all of campus. If you go into Brand Kit, that's the main differentiator between Canva for Enterprise and all the other products that they have. So you'll see here that main campus has a brand kit, and it has a print version and a digital version because the color builds are slightly different. So if you're working on a print piece, you'll want to be sure to use the print brand kit. If you're working on a digital piece, to use the digital brand kit. Student Affairs will have its own brand kit. So we also, again, have a digital and a print version. And if you click into it, you'll see it will populate with all of the logos that are pertinent to Student Affairs. It will have all of the colors that we need to use and also have all the fonts. So one of the great things about Canva is that your department does not need to purchase the licensing for all the fonts if you're going to be using Canva for design. It already comes included. You can use all 3 fonts in here, and you don't have to purchase licenses for every machine that you're going to use. Let's see. So another section in this kit is the people section. So a seat basically equals a person. Each student affairs seat will be designated as a member. So you can kind of see here that designates you to be able to create and share designs. So all the designs that you make within this enterprise suite will be branded UC Davis. And then groups is another way to organize the different people pulled within Canva. So you see we have a student affairs group, Stratcom has their group, so that we can share assets only to our people and not kind of clutter up everything going out to the whole university. So the templates for use for all of Canvas will be here in this folder. We'll be sharing a folder called Student Affairs Assets that will have all of our templates. And then we'll also have folders for each individual unit so that you can save your designs here. We can also save specifically designed templates for your specific campaigns or your departments. And we'll also be uploading templates that all of the division can use. So I'm going to kind of quickly take you through what that's like to update a template that we've created on Brand. So I'm going to click onto here. So this is one that one of my students designed. We're just going to go into here and say, use this template. So in order to access everything for the brand kit that we need, you're going to go up to File and then go to Switch Brand Kits. And you'll be able to choose which brand kit you want to use, whether it's just stay on print. You can change the photo, and you can do that a variety of different ways. You can upload photos either from Photo Shelter or any events that you have, upload them here, and then you can just kind of go, boop, and it replaces the photo. Or you can see we've also kind of created a filter on this photo, so that effect still stays and remains with the photo. You can move it around, depending on how you want to crop it. You can change it out. But you can see no matter what picture you bring into here, it applies that filter onto it. You can change the colors too, and you can see that here. It'll show you all the other options that you have within our secondary print palette. So you can be safe knowing that if you choose any of these colors, they're going to be within Brand. Whether or not they're going to look good or whether or not they're accessible in terms of contrast, that's a decision that you're going to have to make. With this yellow text, I probably wouldn't want to have a yellow background. That's kind of common sense. But you can choose, a different color that you want. You can go in here and change the text. So you can, enter the name of the event or whatever you want to do here. Let's see. So the way that this template has been designed is that all these separate text boxes are grouped together so that there's even spacing between everything, and no matter how much text you add, it kind of all hangs together. There is no way to limit the character count or the word count. So it's kind of just your best judgment. Obviously, you don't want something that's like super long that's going to run into the photo and just kind of be hard to read. But for the most part, you can change what you need. And sort of the text that is already designed into the template is sort of the best guide to use in terms of character count and word count. You can come up here and change the color. Again, all within Brand palette. You can move some of these elements around if you need to. So there will be different levels kind of security in terms of locking certain elements and things like that. But for the most part, you can kind of do, you can make any change on here and be sure that you're using our fonts and our colors and things like that. I want to show you where the logos will be. There's a little tab here that says logos. We'll have all of our student affairs logos here, so you can replace it with your own. Let's take this white one. We can put it here. We can get rid of the UC Davis one. We can take this and resize it, to fit the space that we want and kind of put it where we need to. If this is like a joint event where another department is doing something, we can add their logo with it. So you can see that it's pretty robust in terms of adding logos and things. Let's see what else. Okay, so let's say we're done with this. Let's say we want to save it and everything. This automatically gets saved into your designs folder. And so right now this is designed for a folder. But let's say we want to, or a flyer, I'm sorry. Let's say we want to also do like a landscape poster. So it's going to be larger in size and a totally different orientation. There's a button here up at the top called Resize. So if we click that, we can choose what size we want to change it to. So there are presets down here at the bottom that will automatically give you a Facebook post size or a Facebook cover size. So there's print options and digital options and social media options all here. So if you click here for poster landscape, You want to hit copy and resize so that you create a full new document. So it takes the elements from the original and then brings it to the new size. So obviously going from a portrait orientation to a landscape orientation doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate perfectly, but it basically brings everything in here for you so that you can update it pretty easily for the new size and the new orientation. And all the text is there. You don't have to worry about copying and pasting and things like that. All of that is here. So to take your files from Canva, how do we do that? There's two ways. If you go here to download, so the two main options are going to be PDF print and high quality PNG. So if you want to print something either to your machine, maybe take it to Repro or to another vendor, you would want PDF print. Canva does allow us to have crop marks and bleeds, which is necessary if you're going to take it to a vendor to print. And then you'll download it onto your computer and then send it off to whoever you need to get it printed. Canva is working with Stratcom on making it so that we can send files directly to Repro and print from there to make that a seamless experience. And then to save something for digital or for social media, you just go to high quality PNG. You want it to be 100% of the size. You can decide if you want a transparent background. And again, it just downloads onto your machine. So this was just, really quick highlight overview of what is possible now with Canva Enterprise. We'll be having more meetings with you over the summer to kind of go through it more carefully and closely and decide, how many seats you need and have all the things in here that you might want for Canva. So again, if there are things that you're using now in Canva Pro or Canva Personal, whether that's templates that you have or templates that you see, start kind of compiling those, making a list, and let us know, and we can go over those and see if we can bring those into Brand for you guys. That's it.
Jen, there's a couple questions.
Okay.
One about your Canva design. Can you take the filter off that picture? Is
For that
locked?
one, no, I don't think so. So this is something where, we can potentially create another one where, another design where there isn't that filter, but it is nice that there is that filter, because if you do like it, then you don't have, there's no question as to how to make that happen,
And then there's another question about the folks that are having logos redesigned. Will the redesign need to happen before they're able to use their logos in Canva, or are the old logos in Canva?
So I'm going to go on a limb and say you can use what you have now. I mean, we're not going to prohibit you from, using what you have. And then once your new one has been designed and approved, then we'll just replace them with your new ones and then you'll be good to go.
And there's one other question about the photo database, the campus one, about adding photos. Can departments submit to have photos added?
I think so. You'd probably get in touch with Karen Higgins over at Stratcom. She's kind of the one that handles the photo shelter. If there's something that you want us to add to our student affairs library, you can get in touch with Steffi, and then we can kind of determine the best way to get those photos up there so that everyone can have access to them.
Potentially, we'd want to add them to our Flickr account too, right?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of just saying.
And then not a question, but I was just going to add that Canva also has presentation capabilities. So you can build a presentation in Canva, export it as a PowerPoint, export it as a PNG. You can also present inside of Canva. And there's some pretty cool features where you can record yourself presenting a presentation, where it has a little circular video of you in the corner. So there's a lot of exciting ways that we're going to be able to use Canva once it rolls out.
So any other questions, Canva related? We're almost through. Andrew's going to go over the timeline for everything that we just talked about. We're going to move that Canva rollout to summer. Andrew, do you want to go through the time?
So kind of the internal launch has already happened. And then this student affairs brand trainings is what we've done last week and this week. So that's kind of where we are in the process right now, like Jen mentioned, COVID has moved Canva from that rollout from spring, and we're going to move that into the summer category. And that's also when the university itself is going to do its external launch. Right now, this whole new brand has only been unveiled internally. So in the summer, there's going to be an external launch as well. The Canva rollout probably in July is what we're looking at. And then we're also going to do these departmental marketing boot camps, which is going to be the SAMC team and your team by department, going through for a bit and really thinking about how to implement this brand. But even more than the brand, this is going to be something we're going to do yearly to, work together and collaborate on your strategy and your marketing and communication outreach efforts for all of the next academic year. So we're going to be doing that over the summer, department specific. And then fall 2020, it says all new materials and brand. So that does not mean that every single thing that you have now, every bit of signage, every piece will be set in September, but it means any new pieces created for fall need to be created using the new brand. So the new colors, the new fonts, and that's part of that marketing boot camp. So we can work a lot more closely together and outlining that strategy and sort of the creation of those pieces.
And so I mentioned in the beginning that we are working very closely with the student housing and dining and campus recreation marketing teams. And so if you're in a department that is supported by those marketing teams, you will continue to work with them. We meet, John and Richard and I meet and are, in conversation about like what the projects look like across the division. So the marketing boot camps are really focused on those departments that SAMC directly supports. So I just wanted to provide that clarification.
And so with that, that's it for the presentation. I think we've got about 20 minutes left that's available for open Q&A.
So Leanne has a question. Does Aggie orientation count as fall?
Yeah, I feel like Aggie orientation, so we updated the colors already, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I feel like Aggie orientation is in a really good place as far as rebrand elements, because everything, the brand overview that we created already have the new colors, and it was Proxima Nova already, right? So the font isn't out of style. Is there anything in particular, Leanne, you were thinking of as you're creating for the fall?
Well, I'm just gonna unmute myself.
You can all unmute at this point. Yeah, please.
Well, everything's up in the air, but I know we are talking about, social media engagement and that, like, creating content in that way. So I think that's where I was thinking mostly.
Yeah, I would definitely suggest that, in combination with Richard's team, we can come together, and we definitely need to get together with you all just to get an understanding of what it's going to look like for fall and how we can kind of strategize ways to reach students with the orientation program in alternate methods, right? Because it's definitely not going to look the way we had anticipated it was going to look. So yeah, exactly. I think it's definitely an area for us to get together and meet and discuss and strategize for sure.
Perfect, thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions about anything we went over today? It was a lot of information. I hope that y'all get a chance to look at the online brand guide and look through some of those materials. I think as you start to kind of engage with the information, it'll start to make more sense. I mean, we really went through very quickly today just to provide a very quick overview. All right, so I think we're good. I think we all would appreciate 18 minutes of the gift of time back to our lives right now. So with that, I'm not going to prolong the training any longer. Oh, we got one coming in. are you still planning on working with departments separately? Yeah, so Terry, definitely the ICC, we will be setting up a marketing boot camp meeting with you all, and we're looking forward to it. So the summer will be lots of boot camp meetings for us, but I think it'll, especially with the uncertainty that we know is going to be upcoming with the fall, I think it's so important for us, goodness, to just really re-strategize, regroup, reset, reimagine what we can do. Because I know you all have made so many adjustments and have been so flexible this spring in trying to get your resources to students who are remote. So we'd love to just kind of build upon that, ask the questions of like what worked, what could we have done better, and just keep improving and keep trying to serve our students in better and better ways as we look at a potential hybrid model for the fall of maybe some students will be on campus and some will be remote. So it'll certainly be interesting times. But I think, you know, we've all proven, I mean, at least I've been super impressed by everyone in the division and how flexible and resilient everyone has been and just responsive to try to be as nimble as possible in serving our students. So really, really appreciate everybody and all their effort this spring. It definitely has not gone unnoticed. So we're excited to keep the momentum going and come up with even more great offerings for the fall in whatever way that looks. So thank you all. You have a great afternoon. Thank you.